what I had promised to do here was to deliver what I am going to argue is a compelling logical proof that anti-racism, the framework offered by Ibram Kendi in several of his books, is false. I'm going to argue that the implication of the obviousness of its falseness is that it is in fact sophistry, and that its purpose is to drive us all into behaving as Ibram Kendi would have us behave. Thereby, it's a kind of manipulation. So what is the proof? Well, the proof involves a phenomenon that I think many of us are aware of with respect to dogs. So the central claim of anti-racism is that there is no such thing as not racist, that everything is either racist by virtue of its action in a system that is racist, or anti-racist by virtue of its opposing that phenomenon, and that there's no place that we could hope to stand. So in effect, we can extrapolate this to there's no colorblind society, that in fact society must be color aware because there's no not racist way for society to be structured. So what's the proof? The proof is this. Have you ever met a racist dog?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Racist dogs are a phenomenon, and I'm going to hypothesize why racist dogs exist. Nothing I'm going to say depends on this hypothesis being correct.
Some number of people may be screaming right now. What do you mean a racist dog? Never met a racist dog. What are you talking about?
Well, a racist dog is a dog that responds with aggression and maybe fear differentially based on the race of the people it encounters. And, you know.
Yeah, not against different colors of dogs, but against different colors of people.
Exactly. That other thing may or may not exist too.
Right.
But let's just say that certainly growing up, it was commonly discussed that some people's dogs had problems with people from certain races, right? They might respond badly to Black people or Latinos. And what I imagine that this reflects is that people have fears or stereotypical responses differentially based on race. We know that they do. That is arguably racism, but it is at least in that same neighborhood. And because dogs are very tightly tuned into their owners' needs and desires and all of this, the dogs pick up the racism or its antecedent that exists in their owners and then embarrass their owners by reacting to people who have done nothing other than have a particular phenotypic marker. So, all right, racist dogs exist, right? By some mechanism, maybe that one. Here's the question, though. A lot of dogs don't do this. Our dog doesn't do this, right? Are those dogs anti-racist? No. My claim is there may be anti-racist dogs. You could, at least in principle, as proof of concept, you could create an anti-racist dog if you could train it to recognize bankers in the act of redlining or something like that. A dog could bark in some way, right? So in principle, there could be an anti-racist dog, but what there most definitely are.
So the definition of anti-racist here then is working to reduce historical oppression by making the situation in the moment unequal so as to end up with equity. Is that the working definition of anti-racism?
So,
okay.
In principle, and that's obviously a ridiculous example I've come up with, but the point is,
the redlining bankers and
the
dogs,
redlining bankers is going to be tough to train a dog to spot that, but it could happen. And so were you to do that, you would have an anti-racist dog. So let's, give Kendi his due. An anti-racist dog is conceivable. But what we have is a lot of dogs who don't respond differentially based on the race of anybody. They're not paying attention to that characteristic. And what that establishes is that a framework in which we define not racist out of existence is inherently false. Not racist is a category that can exist in a context where racism does exist also. And so my point to you, Dr. Kendi, is your framework is bad. We can demonstrate that using a familiar example from dogs. There are not racist dogs, even though they could be racist and in principle could be anti-racist. And therefore, it is upon you. You can either point out what is incorrect about this proof. You can ignore it, which is what I expect you to do, thereby suggesting that maybe there's something to this proof. Or you can, what did I say one was? Was that challenge it? You can accept it. You can challenge it, which I would love for you to do. or you can ignore it, which is what I expect.
Yeah.
But for the
So
rest of us,
I suspect that one form of pushback will be in the form that we have become, unfortunately, all too familiar with in evolutionary biology, which is that's not people, it's not relevant.
right. But see, that's the glory of this proof, is that if the idea is this argument is logically sound, that is to say, Kendi's argument is logically sound, but only resident to human, then okay, let's hear the argument about why that is. And, if I had argued that there are not racist typewriters, you could accuse me of dragging us into a realm, that was irrelevant. You could accuse me of sophistry. But my point is, because racist dogs are a real phenomenon, it is a proper analogy, right? Racist dogs, let's put it this way. Racist dogs are a phenomenon. Anti-racist dogs are plausible. And not racist dogs are common. And my point is going to be, amongst humans, racists exist, anti-racists exist, and not racists exist, and he is defining them out of existence. And
he's defining the third category, not racists, out of existence, which, frankly, in modern times is, I believe, most of us.
Right, and it is the very definition of sophistry, right? The point is, it's a hard argument to field, which doesn't make it true. Right? In other words, the counter argument is difficult to articulate, but that doesn't make it right. And my point is that actually this matters. It's not just some guy deployed a bad argument. It's that argument actually has a moral imperative that it drags along with it, which is it is your obligation to do what I, Ibram Kendi, say, because of course you want to be anti-racist, because what are your other options? Racist, right?
Right.
So the point is that is manipulative sophistry, and it needs to end. We need to recognize not racist is not only a real category, but in fact, I would argue, it is the only long-term basis on which society can properly function. Right?
Not racist.
We have to shoot for a colorblind society, and defining it as not a possibility, and therefore, to the extent that you are not willing to sign up for some formulation, you're a racist. That's nonsense.
And it was Martin Luther King's dream.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because he was a wise man.
Yeah. So I guess just a little aside relevant to that before we move into talking about vaccinations a bit. I think the widespread embrace of Kendi's formulation of anti-racism and Robin DiAngelo's formulation of white fragility demonstrates that the left, of which we are a part, have become a deeply gullible people. And its gullibility is a feature of being a follower, right? Of being, and it makes you prey to authoritarians, of course. And once you are prey to authoritarians, you are probably more likely to accept authoritarianism when it shows up on your doorstep, because it sort of feels like it's what you're doing anyway, and isn't it working well for me? Why not for everyone? Diktats are easier to swallow if you're gullible to begin with. So things like only white people can be racist and all of them are, or believe all women all the time under all circumstances, or trust the science, right? These are insanities. Like there's no way that anyone should be able to say any of those little sound bites with a straight face and mean it without irony. And yet we have a lot of people who, and now a lot of policy being made on the basis that these truisms, which point actually to a not a dumb populace, but a gullible populace, are spreading. And I'm not saying there's not increasingly plenty of dim-wittery to go around too, but I think it's the gullibility that is really getting to me this week, right? So in light of that,
before you go on, I just want to say that is my hope in delivering what is in essence a 3-line proof, is that it is so succinct that those who don't know what to say, there is no not racism, there's only racism and anti-racism, which side are you on, has the thing, right? It's sufficiently small that you could put it on a card. And the point is, actually, I know that's not true. And before you tell me the next thing, right, that I have to do in order not to be over with the racists, I'm going to tell you that formulation is nonsense. That's my hope, is that increasingly we will be able to take the things about which people are bullied into acceptance, the gullibility that you're pointing to, and provide a very simple method for diffusing that that trap?
Well, I feel like I don't yet see it in its totally simple form, in terms of the 3-line proof, the sound bites, etc. But having a stack of these cards, like actually, this is something that could be valuable to people. That having a stack of cards, it's like racist, short definition, anti-racist, short definition, not racist, short definition. This is in the field of possibilities. Like this is in the solution set. Option 3 is it. I'm taking door number 3. Here you go. You're telling me if I'm not an anti-racist, I'm a racist? No, take this. Are we done? Like that's the argument right there. And a lot of people find themselves utterly hamstrung when faced with this garbage.
Well,
right? And so to some degree, what you've proposed and what we're doing, sort of thinking out loud and talking it through, is serving, I think, one of the things that we think it's doing and that we're hearing from people that it's doing is helping to give people the language that they can use when confronted with a situation, but also having something very short and that then can be handed to someone else so that they can have it and come back to be like, oh, not racist. Right.
Right. So I think this is an important thing that we should all be doing. We should all be generating these succinct responses. And I think actually we've done it before because, it'd be hard pressed to figure out whether we were actually first on this. But we, on one of our live streams, responded to the claim that the protests this summer were mostly peaceful by pointing out that, that so was the Kennedy assassination and World War II, mostly peaceful if you're going to, count the number of minutes.
Daily Plaza was mostly peaceful. Yeah.
Right, which then caught on. And so the point is mostly peaceful died a spectacular death as a claim because so many people realized actually that doesn't mean a goddamn thing, does it? Right? Mostly peaceful is sophistry.
Rare events tend to define eras. And they tend to define movements that rare events are the things that start and stop big moments.
Right. So we should, generate these things. And in this case, dogs are like people. They can be racist. That said, most of them are not. Why is that not true of people?
Good.
Dr. Kendi.
Yes, good.